Hey guys, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, I want to talk about something that I love talking about, and that is for those that might be considering quitting their job to pursue their creative dream job. Now, this is a topic that people like to pick my brain on often because, as I mentioned in a previous video, this year marks 13 years that I have been my own boss as a full-time independent music artist. And it has been quite a journey. And something that I've been doing throughout my journey is consulting and helping artists that might want to explore making that leap. And I have learned a lot in how to resource and support and advise artists that are considering that. So I thought today I'd share some things that you might want to think about or consider. Granted, I could talk about this all day and there are probably a million things, but I'm gonna give you 7 things that you might want to consider before making this leap. Okay, so let's get into it. So one thing that I want you to keep in mind if you're considering making this leap, and who I'm speaking to in this particular video, is for those that are essentially entering the gig or freelance economy. Not those that are looking to get on a W-2, but this is for the 1099s, those that will be their own boss. And one thing I want you to remember when you're entering this gig economy is that it's going to look different for each person. Now, I'm in my early to mid 30s, almost mid 30s, which is crazy to say. I'm not there yet, but I'm very close. And my advice now is a lot different from the advice I had when I first made the leap in my 20s. And so you have different priorities, different responsibilities. Now you got big people bills, mortgage. I have a family, a dog, a cat, different responsibilities of kids that are going to be coming soon. And so it's a lot different than when I was in my 20s and I had the energy to just stay on the road. All right, so my first piece of advice for creatives that might be considering pursuing their creative dream job and working for themselves is going to be to know that there are going to be harvest as well as drought seasons. Now, what does that mean? That means you're going to be doing a lot of work at times that are laying a foundation that is building your reputation or building your archive or whatever that might be that you might not see an immediate reward on. That could be related to sync placements, maybe songs that you're recording and that are being pitched to music supervisors that might take time before something gets picked up. Or even think of YouTube right now. This is a great example where I know that I have to show up and be consistent. Despite the number of views or engagement in the beginning, I've committed to shooting 2 to 3 videos per week because I know that the algorithm rewards consistency. And that is very similar to how the creative economy is out in the real world. You keep showing up, and those that keep showing up are the ones that get the reward. And so have I monetized on YouTube yet? No, but I know a day is coming when I will because I just keep showing up. So you want to make sure whatever industry you're showing up to, that you also have a plan in place to be consistent in times where there's feast and times where there's famine, because there will be both. There will be some things that just pop and that'll carry you afloat for a while. And there'll be other times where you are laying that foundation and you have to trust that things will come into play when they're supposed to. A lot of times those drought seasons are times to really fine tune where you need to redirect your steps or where you need to hone in on certain things. It's a time where you are building so that you can get to that season of feasting. So remember, when you enter the gig economy, there's harvest and there's drought. All right, so the next thing that I want you to consider if you're thinking about quitting your job to pursue your creative dream job is going to be to take a very honest inventory or assessment of your work ethic. And I mean doing this from a very honest and compassionate place. Everyone is wired differently. Everyone is motivated differently. And you want to make sure you know what type of person you are. Are you the type of person that thrives by having a supervisor or a manager that holds you accountable, gives you deadlines, and makes sure that you get certain tasks done? If so, that's totally fine. There are different systems or things that you can put in place if you work for yourself that mimic that in a sense. But ultimately, you are going to be your own boss. You're going to be your own supervisor. So take inventory of what motivates you. Also, maybe you're on the other extreme, kind of like me, and you're very much so a self-starter and you're very goal-oriented and you go, 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 and to the point of burnout. Then that's something you want to make sure you're mindful of as well. Because as creatives, it's important to have a very healthy balance between being productive, doing a lot, and being productive productive doing nothing. Downtime is actually very important to being a creative. Now, you don't need too much downtime, but you do need to make sure you have a system in place to manage your time well so that you can take in what you need to, so that you have the flow to create the things that you need to. And so it's very important to take inventory of that, not only for yourself, but other people. Because if you don't know how you're going to spend your time, other outside forces will dictate that for you, be it your kids, be it your friends, be it life in general. It will dictate how you spend your time. And what's so funny is, as a full-time artist myself, sometimes people think, oh, you work for yourself, you can drop whatever you're doing and come in and be at my every whim. And it's like, no, I actually have a process, a system that I show up for that helps replenish me and make sure that I'm productive, all in a healthy way. And so it's very important to take inventory of your work ethic so you can plan accordingly. So for example, if you're not a self-starter, there are different websites that you can join that are free where you can get a work study partner. Now, it's not something that I've tried, but I've heard it from other people who need that extra motivation. And so you have a person that you schedule weekly or monthly times where you're just on the camera together, but you're working on your respective things, and just having that accountability partner helps you. And so maybe that's something that you need to know. Okay, I check in with Sarah in Maine, every first Friday and we get 4 hours of work done, or every single Friday and we get 2 hours of work done, whatever that might look like. Or maybe you're someone like me who just likes to set an alarm and say, okay, I'm going to get done as much as I can get done for this hour. And once the timer goes off, I'm moving on to the next thing. Whatever it might be, you want to make sure you have a system in place, because ultimately you're your own boss. So you work as little or as much as you decide. And that can be a blessing or it can be a curse. It really just depends on the person. The next thing I want to make sure you consider, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I've spoken about it in a previous video, but take inventory of your business wits, because it's going to be very important for you working for yourself. A lot of times I find myself doing administrative tasks and business tasks more so than spending time with my instruments or, singing or writing songs. Because again, you're your own boss. And so you're the one finding the opportunities for you, unless you have a team and an agent and things like that, which I absolutely encourage you have if that's a good opportunity and fit for you. However, you're going to want to make sure you have multiple streams of income, and that might take time to build over time. Maybe in the beginning it might be 2 streams, or a solid 1 stream and a trickle, as I like to call it. I just learned recently in this book that I was reading that the average millionaire has 7 streams of income. And so I took inventory and I saw that I have 5. Now, some of those are trickles. They're not that strong, but I have 5 different areas throughout the month where there's income coming in. And that helps, especially going back to that first tip where there's drought and where there's harvest seasons. And those drought seasons where one area might dry up, another is still coming in. And so make sure that you take inventory of your business wits before jumping in. If you're the type of person that says, I focus on the creative side, I don't think about the business side, I'm just going to caution you to take a step back and think about that statement before making this leap. Because if you don't know and you're passing that off for someone else to know for you, you can be in a pretty vulnerable place. So I always tell the artists that I help, never have someone else do something for you that you have not tried to do for yourself, where you have a general knowledge. You might not be the best, because obviously if they're coming on board, they're taking something off your plate that you've been doing, or they are doing something for you that you honestly can't not do at that level. But it should never be something that you know nothing about. You want to have a general knowledge and business savvy and business acumen for this type of work. And another reason is because when you enter the gig or freelance economy, you're also entering a marketplace that's going to give you feedback on your value and where you can monetize. And that's something you're going to want to take time with in the areas that you want to dominate. But the marketplace will show you, and you want to make sure you're listening to where you add value. So give you a good example of when I started and I came out into the marketplace as a singer-songwriter, and I had my music and I had my crowdfund campaigns and I had my tours. And these were things that I was really building from the ground up. I had people that would come to me and that were instantly very comfortable with paying me to consult them on their music businesses, as well as create websites for them. And it was not at all what I imagined for myself as a singer-songwriter, but I needed different streams of income. And so there were times where I was totally open to, okay, I will take this 2-3 week project and create their website. This is going to help me pay this bill or for this thing to support my career. And so you really want to be open-minded when you get into the industry. Not that you do what others dictate for you, but you're going to be your own boss, and bills are still going to be there. And so you want to really make sure that you're keeping an ear to the marketplace on where your value is, so that you can really monetize on the areas where there's already value. And that might not be in what you thought. There's this book that I read years ago by Marshawn Daniel Evans, I believe is her name. And she talked about the difference between talents and gifts. And I don't mean to get all biblical on you. If you're not religious, this still will help you. There's a scripture that says your gift will make room for you. And a lot of times we confuse our talents with our gifts. Our talents are things that can be nurtured and perfected over time. That's my piano playing. I can get better with that over time. My guitar playing, I can get better with that over time, or even my singing or my administrative skills. But your gifts are the things that you do naturally without even thinking. And a lot of times when you enter the marketplace, you're looking to monetize on your talents, but you're totally overlooking the gifts that you have because they come naturally to you in areas where you can generate income that support what you want to do as a creative. So, for example, like my consulting, those are very easy to do, to sit down and help someone come up with a plan to accomplish their goals or to help get them on the right page. That was not what I imagined I would be doing, because I wanted to sing. I wanted to share music. I wanted to, do music. But consulting was something that I still do on the side because it helps afford the areas where I'm still growing and nurturing and finding my place in the marketplace with music. And so this is not about going on a completely different path. It is about using your common sense. As the scripture says, your gift will make room for you. That has made a lot of room for me with grants and how I'm able to articulate a vision and write it down very easily. That's my storytelling ability that also I've learned to nurture in my talents with playing guitar and writing songs. But my gift of being able to cast a vision and tell that story and come up with a plan or execute on something, those are things that I found that I could monetize in the marketplace right away. And so really make sure you have your business wits about you, because it's going to blow your mind when you enter the marketplace, the feedback that you get from the marketplace. And then you're going to need to take that, hone in and assess, but also when you're your own boss and this is your only way to provide for yourself, you're going to need to be thinking ahead. So my fourth thing is going to be something that everyone might not agree with, but it has served me well, so I'm going to share it. And that is going to be to minimize your debts and your lifestyle where necessary. And that is because debt is something I believe that can really, really, really just put a damper on things. And that's because I believe debt is something that impacts your financial freedom. Now, I know and have learned that the rich use debt to get ahead. And I've definitely received some perks in recent years now that I'm established from using debt and the rewards and different things that you can get when you have that money to pay it back. But when you don't have that money to pay it back and those bills are over your head every month and the interest is accruing, so is your stress. And you will take opportunities that you might not want to cover those bills. For example, designing websites when I really want to sing and do music. Websites was something I did not enjoy. I actually dreaded that, and that is not a income stream that I held on to. It was something that I got rid of the moment that I could have. It was unnecessary stress that I did not want to put up with, but because I had certain bills that I needed to pay and certain responsibilities, that is something that I had to entertain. And so I really say minimize your debts where you can and really assess your lifestyle. Be honest with yourself. If you know my lifestyle is I like to make X amount of money and I need X amount of money coming in every week or every month, then maybe it's okay to do your creative job alongside another form of employment that can help provide that lifestyle for you. keep that in mind because, again, there's feast and famine season. There were definitely some times in the beginning where I was eating a lot of ramen noodle, ramen on ramen. This whole gluten healthy thing I'm doing now, gluten-free, dairy-free, that wasn't an option back then. So you really, really, really want to make sure you minimize debts where you can. It was around year 7 in my creative career where I realized this was important and I got very serious about it. And that's when I started taking contract work, teaching music lessons, something I talked about in another recent video. I took music lessons. I would go and travel into people's homes. I had about maybe 20 students per week that had anywhere from 45-minute to hour-long lessons, and I would go into their homes and teach them. And that gave me an extra few thousand per month that I was able to use to attack my debt until I got completely debt free. And so that is something that really helped me and gave me a lot more power to be selective in the opportunities that came to me once I got debt free, because I did not have these bills or an extravagant lifestyle that I had to maintain. And so that's just something to think about if you have an overwhelming amount of debt, or just look for areas where you can decrease your expenses, where you can call your, let's say, your phone bill or your internet bill company and say, hey, are there any savings that I'm missing out on? Hey, I'm thinking about canceling the services. What can you offer me to stay? You know, I would do things like that. I also had someone that helped me at church who created a whole spreadsheet of my debts at the time. And I don't know, he just wanted to help. And it was very, very, very helpful. And he would call certain people that, you know, certain debt collectors that I had and make a cash offer. I know she owes this much, but if we give you this much, will you write it off? And that really worked for me. I know other people, other artists that have had success by simply just getting it written off by certain credit bureaus. And that's not something I've personally had experience with, but do not play when it comes to your debt, because you want your net worth to be growing. And again, we talk about those 7 different income streams that most millionaires have. Well, of course, they can use debt to leverage and help get ahead because they have all these different income streams to help cover it. So before we get to that place, let's make sure that we're being honest about our desired lifestyle, areas where we can really pare down when we're getting started. And if not, make sure that we're really keeping that in mind before we make this leap. All right, so this actually leads me to number 5, which is going to be to build before you leap. Now, this is the one I didn't do. And again, I leaped when I was in my very early 20s. I was about 20, 21. And so I did not build. I just completely leaped. But if you are like I am now in my 30s and you have other responsibilities, you're going to want to build before you leap, so it feels more like a transition than a free fall or a trust fall. Steve Harvey has this video that I love about jumping, and he says, like, eventually the parachute has to open for you, but you're going to get cut up on those rocks, he says, before it does. And I used to listen to that video so much earlier in my career because I did just do the free fall leap and eventually wait for the parachute to open. But a way to not get cut up on the rocks as badly is to build before you leap. So stack your wins while you have a traditional employment job, building clients, building your audience, different opportunities, gigs. Make sure you're stacking those so it's a smoother transition, because the last thing you want to do is go from a 40-hour work week to an 80-hour work week, all because you did not make a smoother transition. And then you have an 80-hour week as a self-employed creative. And you can definitely do that. I definitely did grind a lot in the beginning. But you also have to remember, entrepreneurs have the highest divorce rates. There's a lot that comes with working for yourself. And so if you have a family, maybe you have a partner, you have kids, these are things that you don't want to completely suffer because you're spending 80 hours trying to build something from the ground up. Build before you leap. All right, so the 6th thing I'm going to say is actually a repeat from a previous video, and it's still important. And that is, make sure you're carving out time to constantly educate yourself on your industry. things are constantly changing, constantly evolving. Even now, I'm doing content creation now. This is not something I was doing 10 years ago, 5 years ago in this sense on YouTube. You want to make sure you're educating yourself on where your industry is going creatively, and make sure you're carving out a certain amount of time, be it an hour every morning or 30 minutes each morning or 2 hours each week, whatever that might be, to really just take in and soak up as much information as you can about where your industry is going. Because when you work for someone else, they often do that for you, or they hire someone to help do that for you, or have, monthly meetings where they bring a consultant or someone in, a speaker in, to help speak about the future of your industry. That's you, boo. You're gonna be the one to do that because you are your own boss. So make sure that you are carving out that time to know, where is my industry going? Even taking a step back and saying, where did my industry come from? Because if you look at the past trends and the evolution, I love doing that with music business. I can spend way more time than I need to looking at how the music industry has evolved over time. I love seeing like when CDs boomed in the 2000s and how that changed the industry, and then Rhapsody and downloads and how that changed the industry. And now we're at streaming and people ain't even paying for the download, they just getting the stream, where that's going. And the cars don't have CD players anymore. You really want to look at where things are going, and the kids are watching the streamers and the gamers. Make sure you're staying up to date on where your industry has been, and especially where it's going, so that you're staying up on it. All right, my last thing, and this is number 7, is going to be to define what success looks like for you. When you make the leap, you are going to meet so many other people that do what you do. They're at different stages in their journey, and I guarantee you are never going to find anyone who has the perfect recipe for you. You can glean and you can learn from others and their journey and their success, but your recipe will always be your recipe, and that's going to look different for each person. You're going to want to make sure that you know this before you leap, so that you have very clear goals that you're working for you. 1-year goals, 3-year goals, 5-year goals, so that you stay on track, because you're going to get different opportunities and different people that see your grind or see what you have the potential to accomplish. And much like a job, they are going to try to rope you in for their purposes. And so you want to make sure that you're very clear on what success looks like for you, so that you can stay on your path. And so that is a wrap for today's video. If you are thinking about making the leap, let me know in the comment section. I love talking about this topic. I'm a creative, my partner is a creative, and we have both had different journeys and different leaps at what that has looked like for us. I could talk about this all day. So leave me a comment and let me know if you've made the leap, if you're thinking about making the leap, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. All right, until next time.